Welcome back, everybody, once again to another episode of TJ Talks the News. Today is September 20th, 2021. It is a beautiful Monday morning. It's quite brisk outside, kind of chilly. The weather's starting to change, turning into autumn. There's something about the switch to fall that makes me just incredibly nostalgic, and I think it has something to do with what it was like at school around that time. And you would have like back to school. It's weird nowadays with my kids. They do back to school like the second week of school, but when I was growing up, we waited until like mid-September, and that way the kids could have done some work. And so it was I don't know. Whenever it starts to change to autumn, I always think of back to school night, and I think of these smells because they used to do like potlucks and stuff. We don't have any of that anymore. Probably because of like lawsuits and stuff. It's kind of weird. I don't know. For being such a loner, solitary person, such an introvert, somebody who hates being around other people, I I I kind of lament the loss of that sense of community that may or may not have existed. I don't know. I feel like I'm looking at things through rose colored glasses in terms of a lot of my perception of the past is based on media that I've consumed. Um, and I mean, and that includes television, but it also includes like books and stuff that I've read. So, but I don't know how strong that sense of community really was, and I'm sure that it was stronger for some groups more than others. But I don't know. Like I grew up watching the show The Wonder Years, Kevin Arnold, growing up during the 60s and the 70s. And there's just something about that sense of community. The neighborhood children playing together and how kind of close knit everything seemed. You knew everybody's name and stuff. Um I don't know. I feel like we've lost something because we don't have that anymore. And maybe it's just me, and maybe this still exists. I'm sure it does still exist in certain parts of the country. Um, but I mean, you think about like the loss of that potluck at the school and what that could provide in terms of parents developing relationships with teachers, parents developing relationships with other parents. Um, and we still do have that kind of stuff, but it's it tends to be a lot more formal and businesslike and less about just kind of hanging out with your community, you know? On the other hand, I think a part of that came along with that was that kind of being anchored to your community and not really having the freedom to leave it was what a lot of people found themselves in. And for if you're a woman or you're black or something, back then being anchored to your community is maybe not the best thing. Um, or for anybody for that matter. But I also think about this in terms of kind of parent child relationships, and you think back, 100 years ago or so, it wasn't, kids would live with their parents, parents would live with their kids, and sometimes you would have these large complex families with aunts and uncles and grandparents and everybody kind of living all together, and it was like a little mini community. And how part of me really wants that, but then part of me thinks I can barely stand being around three people for more than a few hours, so I can't. But I just, there's something about the community there that I think is really important that we've lost. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to the news. We're back on Reddit News today for this Monday morning. Amid reports of homelessness and food insecurity, 25,000 employees sued Disneyland for better pay. So I'm assuming that the reports of homelessness and food insecurity refer to Disney employees themselves. It's kind of astonishing how many people Disney actually employ. Um, every time Disney comes up, I have to remind people that they were, or their employees were, one of the biggest contributors to the America First PAC, which is a Trump associated white nationalist PAC. and I'm not making this up. So I don't know. I have heard some minor criticisms of this website, this Open Secrets website. But what they do is they publish lobbying information. Um, Now, interestingly, if you search it this way, I think it shows up a little differently, and it really depends on how they break it down. Because I think you can break it down by like what the company has contributed versus what individuals within the company have contributed. So here we go. So you can see the top recipients from Disney. Again, Walt Disney Co. This is the people who make all of those lovely children's movies and stuff. They donated 10 million to America First. Now it says from individuals. The organization itself, so Disney itself, donated 15,000 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And of course, and you can see they're donating to Democrats and Republicans. Um, but I think the fact that they're donating to Republicans at all should be enough for a boycott of Disney. But it's never going to happen because people love Star Wars too much. Um, and I'll admit it's hard as a parent to explain these things to a child because my daughter loves everything Disney related, and I'm kind of pissed at my brother because he bought us a Disney Plus subscription or whatever, a streaming subscription, a 1 year subscription. So he got it for us last Christmas, so that my daughter could watch all the Disney movies and stuff. And I'm like, I really would rather her not be involved in Disney related stuff at all. Uh, so we are not going to be renewing that subscription. Um, I will say it's nice. There is one movie that I can't help but watch on there. And again, this is why it will never work, right? No, I could totally boycott it if it meant giving up this movie because I've seen it enough to where it doesn't matter anymore. But the movie Willow, oh my gosh, one of the greatest fantasy movies I think of all time. Willow, Willow. Sorry, Matt Morgan. Sorry, yeah, it's such a great movie. Val Kilmer, and yeah, so that is the one movie that I've watched on there. And then my wife will have Hamilton going in the background like all the time because everybody loves this Hamilton stuff. But I know like I think it's Walt Disney's like granddaughter is like super outspoken about the greed of the company. But I don't think she's in charge of the company anymore. But I could be mistaken about that. I've heard lots of horror stories about the treatment of employees, about just how they run especially the parks in general, and it's very fascist. It's very Nazi Germany like. Um, so yeah, I going to Disneyland was like it was a yearly thing for my family because we live really close to it, and I know that growing up it was one of the big things that my mom's family did. And it's one of her fondest memories growing up. She grew up with two extreme alcoholic parents, um, pretty sure abusive parents. But beach trips and Disneyland trips were like the one time in her life. And boy, man, my mom, she she's just like the strongest, most kind person I've ever known. And the amount of shit that she's had to deal with her entire life. Um, so her sister, she has a brother and sister. They're twins, but of the twins, it's a boy and a girl. The girl was born with Down syndrome, and younger twins. So my mom, growing up, was basically tasked with taking care of them, especially my aunt with Down syndrome. And so while my grandparents are going off and getting drunk and stuff, my mom is there taking care of her. And all I've ever wanted for my mom is to not have to take care of people. You know, I probably should have chosen a different profession if that was the case. I think she likes it. That's why she chose to be a teacher. Um, I think she enjoys it, but at the same time, I think it's exhausting for her. And my my middle brother, was homeless for a while, and then he's back living at home now, and she's back to taking care of him, and then my dad's health is failing, and so she's basically like never had a day in her life where she's not taking care of somebody. And boy, that must suck. So when my mom says, "Do you want to go to Disneyland?" I'm there, by her side, ready to go to Disneyland, and so she's excited about taking my daughter and stuff, and we'll do it. But I gotta say, it sucks, man. It used to be somewhat enjoyable, but and we go to Disneyland, here in California. I don't know if Disney World or any of the other parks are different, but just in terms of how crowded it is and the lines and it's just I think like it was like 3 or 4 times ago we went, and this was probably 15 years ago. Cause yeah, we don't go every year anymore for a number of reasons. But I think last time we went was with my son, and he was still. So yeah, it couldn't have been that long ago, cause he was I think he was an infant. But anyways, um, my brother got into got into a fight with somebody over strollers. They were trying to push their strollers past, and yeah. But it's just I don't want to. And then just everything about the park is just kind of ugh. It just reminds you of how terrible we are as a species. When my daughter listens to this episode when she's like 15 or whatever, it's gonna be hilarious. Okay, let's see if we can find some other stuff. California reports lowest COVID-19 case rate in the country. That is pretty astonishing. I wonder why that is. Because I feel like other states are taking similar precautions as us. We have a lot of people. I wonder if that could be thrown off the statistics in some way. We do have a high vaccine rate, so that probably helps. Maybe it's all the sun, right? Isn't COVID destroyed by the UV rays? But it really is astonishing. Now, of course, I read this headline with the knowledge that I live in one of the worst counties in the state. So, I don't know if it's really like they just had to call in the National Guard to help, and everybody is still trying to pretend like it's not as bad as it is. Uh, but I'm curious to see why. Like, why is our state so successful compared to others? Um, Even others that are taking stricter precautions than us. Yeah, I think there are, like Oregon, Washington, I think maybe have some stricter measures. Dow futures tumble more than 500 points as the September slide intensifies. Um, yeah. I was reading this great piece yesterday about how we need to stop using the stock market as an indicator for economic stability and progress. That's always what we go to. Every time I see the stock market slide, I think, maybe some wealthy guy lost some money, but then the reality is that they make money whether it goes up or down. People losing money right now are people with 401ks and stuff. And it's from what I've read, this is at least partially due to economic collapse in China that may have rippling effects throughout economies, and we may be entering into another recession here relatively soon. And I've also read some disturbing stuff about failure to really address the problems from 2008 and how those may be piling up again and ready to blow to strike a gigantic blow to the economy. And when you look at the inflation numbers for the last few months, it certainly doesn't look like we're headed into a very nice place. I will say economists have been predicting a recession for a while now, so it was about time. It just sucks that it always happens when a Democrat is in office, huh? Gabby Petito, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's so weird. Sometimes I feel so just out of the loop because you have these kinds of stories that really blow up, but I don't really have much interest in. but they just dominate the news cycle. Um, I from what I gather, it's a young woman who had a fairly significant social media presence, was on a cross country trip with her fiance or her boyfriend, and the boyfriend ends up returning home without her. She's missing, and they found this body. There's also, I think, maybe like a. They got pulled over by the cops at one point, so I think there's like a body cam footage of them fighting. So the theory right now is that he murdered her. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's like this kind of stuff happens all the time, and maybe we should be paying attention to each and every instance that it happens. But you would probably go crazy if you were to do that. So why give so much attention to this one? I think it's probably just because of the social media, the fact that she is attractive and white and blonde. Um, Probably the ongoing kind of mystery controversy surrounding it. If there's video footage, of course, it's gonna make it more popular. But yeah, I don't know. Bitcoin drops 8% to below 44,000 as risky assets tumble globally. Regulatory concerns intensify. So if you can't see the red flags now, the economy is not headed in a very good direction. Whenever I hear the word Bitcoin, I always think about this student. This was years ago when it wasn't brand new, but it hadn't really taken off yet. And they said like their brother or their cousin had talked them into buying some. But in class, I had mentioned how I think it's ridiculous or something like that, and or I was probably sharing a news story about how it was, you know, unstable or something. So when she asked, like, well, should I not invest it? And I said, I don't know. Based on what we're reading here, it doesn't seem like a good idea. And if she had invested, I mean, and maybe she did still invest, but I remember at the time it also tripped me out that students were talking about investing money when I'm like swimming in student loan debt. It always trips me out. It was when my students find out like they they make more than I do at their minimum wage jobs. They always are kind of like, whoa, um, yeah. Especially now with minimum wage going up in a lot of places. Like I think I read that some McDonald's are going to start offering $20 an hour. Honestly, I would probably, besides the effect to my physical and mental health, I would probably be better off. So when you wonder why our education system is failing, maybe you should look to the fact that McDonald's employees are making more money than some of our teachers are. Now, granted, I only work, well, on paper I only work part-time. I only work 16 hours a week, but the reality is very, very different than that. Because I only spend 4 hours a week in class. Is that right? No, I'm sorry, 8 hours a week in class. So then they assume 1 hour of work per hour of class time, which is fucking ridiculous, especially if you're an English instructor like I am. Maybe if you're in the math and sciences and don't care about being a good teacher and you can just run the scantrons through the machine. But it can take me an hour to respond to one essay. Probably because I'm bad, because I'm so terrible when it comes to being able to filter myself. I just want to say all the things in my feedback. So it's my own fault. And I'm trying to get better at it. But still. And I like being able to do that. You know, I remember having this conversation with a colleague of mine about the grading system that I use. And there's in one of the kind of marketing things that I did for it, where went and gave a presentation on it, I pointed out that it's theoretically supposed to save you time on record keeping and stuff, because you're not having to like tally percentages or anything like that. It's just, it's basically credit, no credit. But at the same time, it kind of relies on giving really good feedback and sometimes having lengthy conversations with students. So, like, one of my colleagues was like, I don't know if I can do this with my full load of classes. how could you do this? I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if you can. And so again, that tells you a lot that you can't really be a good teacher in the current system because you're simply overwhelmed with too many students. And again, it depends on discipline and stuff, but based on research, the ideal class size for a class like mine is 12 students. The cap on the cap right the class size cap right now is 30. So that's yeah. And my mom sometimes has to teach her, it's also humanities class, it's history, where there's also a lot of writing involved. We'll sometimes have as many as 50 students in a class, and she'll teach 6 of those a day. So, yeah, Chris Rock says he has COVID 19, urges vaccination, and from what I understand, he was vaccinated prior to getting it. Um, Honestly, it makes me really scared for my dad because I don't know. I think it's just kind of a product of old age and fatigue. He just stopped caring, you know? So he does kind of sort of wear his mask when he goes out. But he'll often like forget, like he'll pull it down to talk to people. He'll do stuff like that. Um, and just he'll go out and go hang out at the golf club with a bunch of people in the little dining area without masks on. And he's vaccinated, but you know, he's old and not in great shape. So Pope says church must face truth of cruelty to children. You think? You think it's about time? I'm pretty sure you guys are still trying to cover this up, so I don't know how you can say that while the it still continues. Now, granted, the Pope can't control every little, church in the Catholic religion, but um, hey, hearing him talk out about it, speak out about it, I think is a good step in the right direction. Italian prisoner shoots at rivals smuggled with guns smuggled in by drone. That is freaking awesome. It's terrifying to think about the future that we have ahead of us with things like drones and AI and robotics and just everything that's coming. But it's also really cool to think about it, right? Especially, I bet if you're like a sci-fi author, there's just too many ideas at this point, right? At the same time, those ideas are being taken up left and right, so you gotta, keep on top of things here. It's always amazing. You get this great idea, and then it's like, oh, well, somebody's already written about that. It's already been done. Sorry. But the technology was just invented yesterday. Yep, well, they thought about the technology 10 years ago, so. Um, Texas doctor says he violated the state's new law banning abortions after 6 weeks. Good for him. He should get a Nobel Peace Prize or something, although that award doesn't really mean a lot anymore, but yeah. He's probably gonna have to go into hiding at this point, I would imagine. is kind of where we are in terms of I saw 3 different articles this morning about increased threats to government employees, whether it's mail workers or election workers or elected officials like members of Congress. Uh, and there was a story about the guy who voted in favor of the Trump impeachment, a Republican, and is now deciding not to run again because of the harassment that he's gotten from the Republican base. I wish Biden would speak out more about it. People are fucking under attack, man. Republicans are attacking people. And Biden is still reaching out to them. Again, I would love to be proven wrong. Maybe 20 years, the Biden strategy will have proven effective. But in the meantime, there's a lot of people who are really stressed out, who are hurting, who are being hurt. And there doesn't seem to be anybody out there who's talking about it, who's really kind of standing up for the victims at this point. Instead, they're still trying to negotiate with the attackers. Okay, if there isn't a better headline to sum up the current zeitgeist of American society. Nearly 70% of millionaires are worried about leaving too much money to their kids, survey finds. And, well, I think we'll just go ahead and leave it there for today. I don't know if it's a shorter episode or not, but I got stuff to do. And I feel like as I scroll down further and further, I just get more and more irate and more like my eyeballs are starting to bulge out of my head and stuff. But, alright, you guys, that's going to be it for me for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I will see you tomorrow.